Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to episode number 27. And I'm delighted to have Rory Unsworth. Kiss.
Hi, everyone.
Excellent. And Mark Simpson's wave.
Hey, everybody.
Hi. So to kick it right off, Rory, how about you tell us what is it in the news that you found interesting this week?
My like of the week is the World Commerce and Contracting Academic Symposium in collaboration with Northwestern University. It's something I attended yesterday and the day before. Last year's was in Stanford, so Palo Alto, which was great, you know, from an interest perspective. But this year's was, well, you know, of course it was online. But anyway, the idea behind the academic symposium is to orientate some interested universities along research channels that are relevant to improve the way the world does its contracting. And so this thing, as I said, it went over 2 days. The highlight of day one was a presentation by Nobel Prize for Economics winner Oliver Hart on his pet subject, which is contract incompleteness and the impact of that on power dynamics in commercial relationships and how businesses deal with that. Day two was a brainstorming to set the research agenda using the type of thinking that we have and the type of approach we have, which is classical design thinking. And the group I moderated was talking about the type of research needed around AI and ML within the end-to-end contracting process. So my thought is, you know, what about that is actually not relevant to insurance? So we came up with loads of ideas around research topics. It was really concrete, and I hope that some of the ideas filter through and we'll get some of the best minds on them from these very prestigious universities. So as I say, every sort of fifth episode of our show, everyone should join this association. It's really amazing, it's inspiring, it's really the bleeding edge of contracting. Plus, you'll probably get the chance to join the next academic symposium 1 year from now and set university research agendas for free on these topics. So they're super interested in insurance and reinsurance. This is a really great opportunity for you all.
Excellent. So we'll put a link in the description details below. So thanks for that, Rory. Mark, tell us, what is it in the news that you found interesting this week?
Yeah, so I'm going to go for two things, if I may. First one, I'm going to go for things that I like. So this week, a couple of acts of kindness that I really noticed that I liked, and they were great. So the first one, this guy here, Ed Halsey. If you don't know Ed, he does a number of webcasts. Is really great at raising awareness to things. And Ed, just a kind of an act of kindness this week, a guy called Jim Glover that he didn't really know that he'd been speaking to. Jim was sadly made redundant during COVID. So Ed, off his own back, he's not a recruiter, just set up a webcast, get to know Jim. So as part of the available to work thing. So Ed did that. And why? Just because he's a kind, decent guy. And then the next one, if I just turn the other way, this is through a friend of ours, Paul Willoughby, involved in this, called DeedBees. And again, I'll put the link in. And this is a charity that just matches mentors up with people that need some help and support. So it can be around writing your CV, it can be about coaching. So again, you can just go to the site and register and offer your help and support from your own home. So it was just about kindness, and that just struck me as we absolutely need that. So a massive shout out to those two guys and the DeedBees organization. So great work.
Excellent. It's very much in the theme of the John Lewis Christmas ad they just put up recently, which is about, you know, sharing kindness and love.
Yeah,
it's mine. Do you remember at the beginning of COVID, there was that wonderful lady, and I've forgotten who it was exactly, but she put up something on LinkedIn saying anybody who'd lost their jobs and had a certain type of skill or talent or whatever should just write to her, and that she'd act as some kind of you know, she'd either have something herself or she'd refer them to people who did. So
yeah, there's been many people who took inspiration from that and mimicked it themselves on their LinkedIn profiles, which was great.
Yeah, so that was just, I think, for me, really worthy of something to talk about. But the next one that interested me this week is a city that I love, Munich, and an announcement yesterday that blockchain is going to be used to help to determine some green parking in Munich. So there's the AI specialist Fetch AI and the blockchain provider, Datarella. So yeah, we know a little bit about Fetch. Well, they're working on something around the launch of a smart city infrastructure in Munich, and there's a trial that starts on November the 12th. It's centered around the Connex Buildings Business Center there, but basically, again, I love ANDs, so a multi-agent blockchain-based AI platform, and it optimizes parking spaces at the building, and it's all about reducing car use and CO2 emission. So effectively, these economic agents that are autonomous, well, they'll negotiate the price of parking spaces between the operator and the user. So you'll get a reward if you use a parking space that's less popular, or even if you don't use the parking space at all. And what will happen is Fetch will drop a token, an FET token, to the car park users for every minute that their vehicle's not in the parking lot. Now, what they reckon from this scheme is if it can bring down car use by just 10%, then that could reduce the CO2 emissions by 34,000 tons per year if they scaled it to the city. And if they took that across Germany, that would be 1.7 million tons. Now, bearing in mind, in 2019, Germany produced 805 million tons of CO2, and they reduced that by 6% on the previous year. So it's the first of several trial runs. And again, what Fetch is saying is if they can run these multi-agent systems on a decentralized network, then they can really start to coordinate really complicated tasks between multiple stakeholders and really start to change behavior. So I was really excited about that. And Marcus Trad, if you're watching from Munich, I hope you can sign up.
Excellent, excellent. And we had the pleasure of having Humayun on our show. He's the CEO of Fetch in February of this year. I think it was one of my last podcasts I did face-to-face at that time.
Yeah, BC,
Excellent.
before Corona.
Yes, indeed. Rory, tell us, what is it in the news that made you wonder this week?
My wonder is, where did Recovery go? Do you remember Recovery?
Yes, yes.
So that was the product considered by Lloyd's of London in June or July as a response to the pandemic. And it was supposed to be actually an after event piece, as well as being a prospective pandemic cover. And we're now fully in a second wave all over the place, right? All over the world. Just wondering what happened, guys. You know, where's Wally? Anybody
right
know?
here. What are you talking about? Yes. Well, I'll have to do some investigative journalism perhaps on that front.
Yeah, I just don't know. You know, you make these announcements and then it goes quiet, and that's a bit weird, isn't it? Whenever you've got a product, I mean, it would be a product, right? So whenever you have a product to launch, you just stay in there and you keep communicating about it. But this one, maybe it fell into a black hole.
Yeah. So if you're listening, Lloyd, where's Recovery? Yeah. We're looking for it.
We're looking for it.
Mark, what is it in the news that made you wonder?
So it's about digital transformation again, and about the topic of trust that I've talked about a little bit, but there was another really interesting article I read this week about, look, if we want to get to the purpose of digital transformation, then you need to put relationships and trust first. So I think we've all moved to that universally accepted point that if you are digitally enabled, then in this world of a low touch economy where we've got to work remotely, you've got to be digital, and everybody's been racing to digital. But you know, there's this big reliance on it's all about digital and tech, but fundamentally business is about relationships, human enterprise, and trust. So there's been a big emphasis of late about, well, trust. It's all about trust, and people talk about relationships powered by trust, lots of models around that. And I guess consumers have been driving this as well, because you know, the Salesforce survey I referred to a couple of weeks ago talked about 82% of business customers said that a company's trustworthiness mattered more in 2020 than it mattered in 2019, and it's brought into sharp focus. And there's lots of models about trust. I like the ABCD trust model from Ken Blanchard. It's not new, but it's about, you know, are you able, are you believable, are you connected in terms of you empathize, and are you dependable? Mm-hmm. So are we really looking at that? And let's face it, that trust has been a challenge in the insurance industry on a regular basis. And we've seen that put under a lot of pressure during COVID. So I'm really wondering if digital is actually going to expose trust even more. You know, trust is a foundation and digital is merely an enabler. So I wonder how much emphasis organizations are actually going to put on trust on digital and what else is going to be key for them.
Indeed, indeed. I just want to come back to the point you made earlier on regarding digital transformation, because I fell on a stat and I've been trying to get the source, and once I get it, I'll add it. But what it read is that 12,000 banks across the world, that's 50% roughly of the banks in the financial industry, have not started their digital journeys due to lack of vision, skills, and an investment appetite. And that I found staggering. 50%
Well,
not started their digital journey.
Yeah, well, I can absolutely believe that, because I think one of the other interesting things, I was looking at a stat on this around digital transformation, and lots of execs believe that they are starting digital transformation. Gartner did a survey on this, but what they found is those that felt they were on a digital transformation weren't. They were, the quote somebody used was, all they're doing is making faster caterpillars. They're not transforming into butterflies. So we're seeing a lot of necessity digital. Yeah. So how do we make things like video conference work? How do we make SharePoint work? But it's not really transforming. It's just iterating on what's there.
I mean, I know it's staggering, but in a way, it's also reassuring for those 50% who are left. You know, they're not the last ones, and so if they start now, they're not completely going to be left behind. There's plenty of time to do it. And as you say, Mark, it requires an ambitious process of transformation or rebirth, doesn't it? But if most people haven't started on this, then still time, right?
Oh, there's always time. I think the most important thing is to recognize that no decision is a decision. And particularly in the insurance industry, one of the things I observe is we are so risk averse and we're so concerned about what we're immediately going to lose rather than gain, it can slow decision making down. Meanwhile, our customers are racing to digital and they're moving on and they're more sophisticated. So we can't stop, you know, otherwise we fail to empathize and understand our customers. Then we price blind, or we don't build in the support mechanisms that are needed. You know, it's no decision on whether you should or you shouldn't. It's a necessity. It's like saying, should we adopt electricity?
Yeah.
You know,
I'm with you, but it's not, you know, from a change management perspective, you don't either want to come to people and say, listen, you guys are in the vanguard and you're just being rubbish, right? I think.
Absolutely not. And I completely agree with you. And again, back to the trust thing, is really about trying to empathize, understand people's positions on this. You know, within the team or not. Otherwise, we come back to this myth about people being change resistant, and they're not. You know, people have already navigated really complicated changes very recently with COVID. We're working in new ways. We're adjusting in terms of new behaviors, new things. That's bigger stuff than some of the, you know, changes going on within organizations. So people can do it. It just takes time and effort.
But 2 points on that. So yeah, I mean, change, we're all as humans accustomed to change. You know, when you go from being single to suddenly having, you know, a kid, you know, that whole journey is the scariest you're ever going to have to face, you know, and there's no real booklet. Yes, there are some courses, but, you know, at the end, it's still very hard. But then on the part about the insurance industry being risk averse, but surely that can be a strength. And what I'm trying to say by that is, if you have this fear of risk, surely you must have equally that fear of being left out. If you do not, you know, go with the digital transformation that your customers have been racing ahead, you're going to be left out. Then use that fear, use that risk averseness to your advantage, because you will be left out.
Anyway. Yep. No, I'm with you, but I think it's back to, I think we're all agreeing. This goes back to often about our values and our beliefs that then are enacted at a surface level through our behaviors. And lots of things have been challenging our values and our beliefs, but also they've been reaffirming a lot of those as well. As I said, you know, the importance of trust. We're in a trust business. I mean, I don't need to say that to Rory, you know, as a lawyer. You know, we've got uber rima fides built into insurance contract law, utmost good faith. That's got to be based on trust.
Indeed.
Before,
I think we could,
Buddy, if possible, Mark, what is your background? What is that? I mean, it looks like an amazing place, but what is it, and what has it got to do with your piece?
So this was a wire suspension bridge over a valley with some lights on, and I was just using it as a metaphor to say, hey, you know, things that we traverse might be a bit risky, and we can't just put some shiny lights on them and expect that people will suddenly feel okay about them. So how do we underpin that? So that was without me thinking about it too much, but it was an image that captivated me. It's got a beautiful skyline above it as well, but I had to crop it.
I want to go there.
Yeah, I agree.
Excellent. Well, listen, guys, it's been a wonderful episode, as always very lively conversations. If you'd like to be part of one of our lively conversations, please don't hesitate to put a comment or to reach out to us. We'd love to have you on the show. But for now, we're going to wish you a great rest of the day or evening, and we'll be catching with you next time next week. Have a wonderful rest of the day or evening. Bye-bye, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Cheers.